This one's for anybody that's been burnt by a gym before. Never have I ever been caught out by a hidden fee from a gym. We've all been there. You know how it goes. End of financial year rolls around, the deals start flying, and somewhere in the fine print is a joining fee that you didn't quite catch. Well, Revo Fitness, they play a different game. Never had they ever snuck in hidden fees. Never have they ever slapped on a joining fee. And never have they ever raised their price in nearly a decade. That's not a promotion. That's just how they operate all year round. That's the Collingwood way too. No shortcuts. Revo take the same approach. Great facilities, no BS fees, all lock-in contracts, surprisingly affordable from just $9.69 a week. Head to revofitness.com.au, that's revofitness.com.au, or walk into your nearest club. Hello everybody and welcome to the Pies Nation podcast, where the pies are hot and the drinks are cold. My name is Nicholas Sacco, your host for yet another episode. This is episode 17 of season 8, or episode 218. If you're counting from the beginning, and whilst it was anything but flawless, it was nice for the Pies to get back on the winners list over the weekend as we defeated Port Adelaide by 26 points at the MCG to keep our wildcard final hopes alive. Never thought I'd say that. We chat through what was a pretty average game of footy, which players did get us excited, how fans felt the game panned out thanks to Speakpie, and we get all the latest from our VFL and VFLW sides. And as I welcome Jack Dugan to the Back Chat Studios, a raspy Jack Dugan, I must add, from his efforts during the week in his other profession. It's those cold, mid-June type of games. You get a couple of them throughout the year where you're just sitting through and you're thinking, why have I bothered to turn up to this match? But fortunately for us, despite the lackluster affair, we're on the right side of the result.
Oh, well, we got to win, Nico. That's the most important thing, and it's probably the only thing that we'll be taking away from this one. And yeah, as you mentioned just then, good to be with you, mate, but a bit of a raspy voice going on at the moment. I don't know if that's got to do with, as you mentioned, getting to the end of term with the kids at school, or it is indeed from carrying on Saturday night.
I was going to say, not that much of a game for you to carry on.
A little bit too much, or maybe more so in the proceedings that took place post-match, but that's all right. We'll move on. Look, mate, good to be with you after a win. Finally, I think that was probably the overwhelming feeling of Collingwood supporters leaving the MCG. Not one that'll stick in the memory bank for a long time, but just nice to get the 4 points. Sing the song after the game and not let the footy ruin your week for another week at least.
Yeah, I think that was the overwhelming sentiment for Pies fans as well. We had those two really close defeats to the Bulldogs in Melbourne prior to the bye, and there was still so much commentary in the media space about what we were going to look like going forward. And just nice to alleviate that a little bit against, albeit a pretty average power outfit who had lost a few players by three-quarter time, but can't let that take away from the victory. And there were some pretty key individual performances, which we'll touch on in a moment. But, you know, we've got a relatively okay next few weeks draw-wise, and you just felt like we had to get that win on Saturday to just try and set up what hopefully is a little bit of a momentum booster over the next few weeks, although nothing, of course, is guaranteed. Yeah,
well, that's it, mate. I mean, it would have been very easy if we just sort of came into this game. And to be honest, there were large parts in that first half where it looked like it was going to get a bit dire for us, with Port just scoring far too easily. And look, as you said, mate, nice to get a win because, you know, we go into the Tigers this week, you know, probably thinking we're favourites. And then we go up to the Gold Coast, lots of Collingwood supporters up there. With a bit of hope, which would be nice. We'll be there, Nate. Looking forward to that. But then again, you could build off something. You could build the back half of the year might not look so bleak, and we could, you know, look to nab a 10th to 8th spot if that looks like where we're going to be. But again, we're in and around these teams like Port Adelaide at the moment. So to win by that, you know, comfortable 4-goal margin, 5-goal margin is nice. And as you said, mate, hopefully something we can build on for the rest of the year.
Absolutely. Well, I say it could have been a larger margin, but let's not really touch much on the last quarter, I think. One of the more average performances from both sides I've seen.
Was there a goal in the last quarter?
No goals from either side in the last term. It was the shortest quarter, I think.
Yep.
in the modern era or close to it, or for at least a while. So pretty extraordinary scenes, really. Not bad for me because it means I could doze off a little bit earlier after watching the Socceroos. All right, let's get to the part that caught our eye. Who was it from Saturday's win against the Power that stood out to you?
Look, there was a couple, but I want to talk about the young fella, Sammy Swadling. Really impressive debut. We speak so much, Nico, about the kids coming in, and we've spoken at length about it this year in the pod about play the kids, don't play the kids. But I think every time that we have debuted someone this year, they've looked, or given, you know, some of our younger brigade a go, they've looked more than solid, and there's no more solid than there was from Swadling on the weekend. A moment that really caught my eye, and it's probably the one real big positive from the game as well, was a couple of highlights from Jordan De Goey and Nick Dacos and the like, but really, really impressed with his goal because that was holding the ball every day of the week, that passage of play. Couldn't believe that wasn't paid, and then, pardon me, to put that aside and go through, throw it on the left peg, that was probably the loudest moment of the game, bar none, and a really nice moment for the young fella. Yeah,
it was great to see, and he was a name that had been talked about quite a bit from Pies fans throughout the year as someone we'd like to see get given a go in the senior side. And you're right, it was nice that he didn't let that get to him in the moment and just, okay, we'll move on, and literally within 10 to 15 seconds, the ball's back in his hands, and before you know it, he slotted it through the big sticks, the very cool, calm celebration.
Loved the celebration as well. That was good.
Yeah, just, yep, that's right, I can do that. No, very nice, and a very solid debut as well. Got plenty of the footy, looked comfortable at the level, and hopefully that's something we can continue to see from Sammy Swadling. So very nice stuff from him. I went for Jordan De Goey because I thought, he's been spoken about over the last month as playing some outstanding football, but it was said during the week that he hasn't probably played better football than this in a long, long time, and when he finished with 26 disposals, nearly 600 metres gained, he had 3 goals, 8 marks, 8 score involvements, 9 inside 50s. It was actually his highest rated game since the 2023 grand final. That's how good it was on Saturday night. And you just watch him at his peak like that, his ability to have a say in the midfield, winning clearances, and then also being such a threat up forward. His leading patterns from deep inside the forward 50 was superb, and he just knows where the ball is. I think we're easy to forget how great his forward craft is, and that was on show again on Saturday night. My only worry, and I know this is very rough to say because he's 30-odd years old, and this isn't a season that's going to pan out to be by the looks of it so far. I just hope we haven't wasted another really good Jordan De Goey year. He's been so critical for us at certain stages throughout his journey in the black and white, and whilst it's fantastic to see him playing in the form he is, unless we get a move on and start to win consecutive games of football, it doesn't look like we're going to be high up on the standings. It's fantastic for him personally and individually, and we can only hope as Collingwood supporters that we see that on a constant basis going forward. But when you've looked at Jordan De Goey's career, it's been anything but consistent, unfortunately. And I just hope that we are seeing this in 2027 and 2028 as hard as that can be considering his injury history, and that we're not wasting too much of it, because right now he's playing scintillating football, and he's arguably having the most impact on the ground outside of a Nick Dacos. So love to go his game.
Absolutely, and I've loved his last 6 weeks. It's got to be said. I reckon since that Hawthorn game, he's easily, bar Nick, been our best player and our most consistent player. And look, you just touched on it there, mate, but often over the course of his career, he's such a barometer for us as well. When Jordy De Goey is going well, you feel like we're going a little bit better as a side. Now, this year's a bit of an anomaly in that sense that he's been playing really well and we're probably not quite up to scratch. So, yeah, look, you do start to question not what's the point or anything like that. But it's still fantastic to see him in career best footy form. But, you also think, how good would this be if we were, trying to grab a top 4 spot or something like that. But I think the barometers for Jordy De Goey's game, just watching him over this last 6 weeks, is he's almost on autopilot when he's playing this well. And you can see that in his game. When he's not going so well, it seems like he really struggles to get himself involved in the contest. But that has just not been the case at all this year. He's getting around the ground beautifully, impacting on both sides of the ball, both defensively and offensively. And also now on the weekend, it's probably been the one thing that he hasn't had to do in the last 6 weeks. He's hit the scoreboard heavily, but he went forward and kicked 3 goals and got on the end of a really nice one as well on the left peg there. I think it might have been in the second or third term. So, Yep, well done to Geordie to go in. Look, come the votes a little bit later, it's going to be tough scrapping for the 3 votes from both of us, I reckon.
So my silver lining to this is that hopefully we get to see another 2 or 3 years of a brilliant De Goey Dacos formation, and we might be able to add some stars to that duo, which we might touch on a little bit later. But it is wonderful to see De Goey get back to this, because again, there were times like this time last year, I reckon he'd only played about 4 games. We all had our eyes on him at Frankston playing a VFL match, hoping to get back into the team. We were struggling to see if he was ever going to be best 23 at times and where he's going to fit into the mould of the team. But he's just reminded everyone this year that with a strong preseason and consistent game time, he can be one of our most damaging players in the side. So wonderful to see Jordan De Goey do that.
And looking forward, if nothing else, to this next evolution of his career, mate, and how that looks, from a leadership sense, with maybe young blokes coming up through the ranks. And, him, I can't imagine he's probably too vocal around the group from a leadership sense, but certainly leading with actions and showing young blokes where they need to be at certain times. He could be still a really important player. We haven't lost our ability to have Geordie be impactful going forward beyond season 2026. If, he's not impacting like this with the football, from the football sense, I still think he's been around the game long enough, and hopefully, with a few more pre-seasons under his belt, just sticking around, he'll be another one of these players. I know he's in a different age demographic, but like a Howie, like a Steele, like a Pendles, who can, assist the young group coming through the ranks.
Speaking of impactful, Nicholas Dacos just showing us again why he's the best player in the competition. 41 disposals, another goal to his name, 9 clearances, nearly 500 metres gained. I mean, superb once again. I don't want to give too much credit to how poor Port Adelaide were at times in this match. But yeah, Nick just carried us for large stages of that first half when, like you said earlier, Jack, things did look a little bit dire. You just knew that if you got the footy on, if you had the footy in his hands, that he was going to create something special, and he was able to do so once again with some brilliant set-up plays. Again, able to hit the scoreboard. He had 10 score involvements as well, 6 inside 50s, went at nearly 80% disposal efficiency. And these are not cheap touches by any sense. It's quality football that Nick is playing right now, and it looks like he's going to get another 3 votes in the Brownlow at least.
Yeah, we hope so, especially considering it looks like there won't be much other silverware coming Collingwood's way, apart from, of course, on Copeland Trophy night. But look, we hope he can get the 3 votes, so he's featuring on that Monday night of grand final week. But again, as you said, mate, I'm struggling for words to just keep talking about this bloke because of how good he is. And yes, coming up against a bit of a lesser opposition who probably didn't have the firepower to deal with him like some other sides are going to. Just a really, really solid game. You can only play the opposition that's out there, and breaking lines was the biggest one for me, Nico. How many times did he get away from a stoppage or get away from his opponent?
Yeah.
On rebound, when we were slingshotting the ball from our defensive 50, his running power was on full show on Saturday night, and it's really impressive. Probably, with a few little niggles getting around this year, probably hasn't had that at times, but that was a really, really good sign for Nick Dacos for the back half of the year. He's already been exceptional. He's already still one of the best players, if not the best player in the comp. We hold him to a high standard. And Saturday night just reminded us, how bloody good that bloke is. And again, something to look forward to for the back half of this year. If blokes like Jordan De Goey, Nick Dacos, and the team, are performing like this, then we might be able to salvage something from this year, which 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was dire, mate.
It was. It certainly was. I was looking back, that game against West Coast, the Pendles record-breaking game, being the last win prior to Saturday.
It felt like forever. I think we were all leaving the ground on the MCG from the MCG on Saturday night going, when was the last time we actually sung the song? So
I haven't had to think about that
nice
for a while, that's for sure. On the other side of the ledger, changing the narrative is Ed Allen, I must say. So did the role on Zach Butters. Now, you look at it on paper and he's had 25 disposals and 7 clearances, but no influence on the game, really. I think he had a good goal assist, and he did hit the scoreboard himself. But Ed Allen not only able to limit his impact, but also have plenty of the footy himself with 20 disposals. So it's nice to see that we're starting to find a role for Ed, playing in his natural position inside the midfield. It seemed like a last dance style for Ed, knowing the last few years him being on the list, in and out of the side, playing on the wing, playing at half back, playing at half forward. We knew that he had the talent, particularly in the VFL, that was highlighted, but his last 3 weeks have been very solid, and And look, if it's a run with role for the time being, and it just means that we get some more games into him and some more experience, and he hits that 30 to 40 game threshold by the end of next year, that's a huge win for us, and then we can hopefully see him become a permanent fixture in that midfield.
100%, man. I think you feel like his game's trending in the right direction. Obviously, there was a fair few worries last year and in the seasons that have been past before that he was going to be another one of these players that was too good to play in the VFL, not quite good enough at the level. But it's amazing, again, how good players are when they play in their positions. Ned Long's another one. He got a bit more of a run through the midfield on Saturday night and just looked more comfortable around the ground. So big props to Ed Allen for those reasons, playing the run with role with Zach Butters, but also when he's getting the footy now, not panicking, very calm, seems like he knows exactly what he wants to do, which, a month or so ago was definitely not the case. So really, really exciting for his game as well. And again, just another thing to watch, another thing to be excited about for the rest of the year.
Yeah, it was the biggest flaw in his game for mine because, again, we knew he had the ability to win the football, but it was what he was doing with it that was really letting him down. And you're spot on the fact that he was able to make more measured decisions, just take that extra second with ball in hand to then suddenly get it on. He had 85% disposal efficiency. I'd take a stab to say that's his highest that he's had this season or potentially even in his career. So that's wonderful to see that he's getting that recognition and he's slowly starting to have a role in this match. You mentioned with Ned Long as well. It's good to see him get plenty of the football again, playing in his natural position. Didn't see him too many times inside forward 50. Saw him more in defensive 50, I reckon, than the forward 50 throughout this game. So that was great to see. These are all names that Angus Anderson mentioned when I got the chance to chat to him last week. You can watch that interview, by the way. And it was he's probably the first player that we've interviewed on Pies Nation that got dropped the following week. So it's unfortunate that he wasn't able to make the side. I'm sure he'll get his chance back soon. But he did really touch on the fact that, there's a lot of talk around external media about how old the list is, but it's so important for these young guys to learn from some of the more experienced veterans out on the ground. And the two most experienced players we had on Saturday were Steele Sidebottom and Jeremy Howe, who both had pretty solid performances. Jeremy Howe more so after some pretty rough weeks, you would say, that he looked a step behind the pace, but for him to finish with, 24 disposals going at 96% efficiency and having 10 intercepts, 9 rebound 50s and 8 1%ers, just nice to see him get back into some form. And then my favourite of all time, Steele Sidebottom, having 25 disposals. Good to see him get back into 20s as well, I must add. But again, look, I know that you can make a lot about the opposition that we faced on Saturday night, but just to see those veterans get a little bit of form back into their footy is always a good sign.
Yeah, and a nice reminder for us as well, I feel, of Collingwood supporters and indeed the broader AFL landscape, both fans and media personalities alike, that these blokes are still very capable footballers. I think I was worried about Howie, I will admit that, after the King's birthday game, I should say, sorry, that it was looking like a sliding doors moment for him, that he might not be quite up to it, as is often the question with this older brigade. But a nice reminder for me and a nice reminder for, as I said, the AFL, that he's still very capable. Took an excellent mark, Nico, as well, which we didn't think there'd be too many of those left in the bank. And to touch on Steele, just getting more involved. And I think there might have been a little bit of a position change. I know we still saw him line up, the halfback flank a few times, which, makes my skin crawl a little bit. But you just feel like he got himself involved around the ball a little bit more often. And that was really pleasing to see. And again, showing the young blokes how it's done, which is what we love and probably the value that we're going to get out of these blokes the rest of the year.
I hope he's got a lot more performances like that in him still. I just want to see him play for as long as he can while having an impact, of course. I don't want him playing if he's not, but he had a die a few weeks and there was talk about his place in the side.
There should be a case study on, I think, every time we bring it up on the pod and really go hard at these blokes and really start to question their long-term or their short to long-term future at Collingwood, that they come out and have a win. Maybe they do listen, Nico. Maybe Steele and Howie and Pendles, they're on the got the AirPods in at training on a Tuesday with Fires Nation, giving them a spray, and other supporters as well. So, look, again, as I said before, great reminder, and hope, fingers crossed, they can keep having that impact for the rest of the year.
Absolutely. Looking at the forward line, so Tim Membry popping up for 3. So apart from Geordie De Goey was the other one to hit the scoreboard quite a bit. I mean, he's just showing how reliable he is inside forward 50 and You can always rely on him to hit the scoreboard. So it was great to see him have a role to play. Again, when goals were hard to come by in that first half, he was able to stand up and play really well on that front. But I was probably more focused on Jack Buller and his inability to take his chances in front of goal, which I think is a little bit of concern. He's started to have a little bit of a run at it. And, you don't take too much out of one game, of course, but he was competing really well, took some nice marks, but the finishing is just letting him down a little bit. And just a little watch for me, Jack Buller, over the next couple of weeks. Of course, we'll get to the VFL later. Charlie West had another really strong performance. But, for Jack Buller to be a mainstay in this side, he's got to take those opportunities. And him and Mitch Pajaski to kick 0-5 between them is not ideal. Again, just one match, of course, but particularly for Jack, I do feel like it's just something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, mate. It was actually something we mentioned in game as well, that he's doing all the right things leading up to that, right leading patterns, competing down the line, getting himself involved in the contest, bringing the ball to ground. I think if you go back and watch the highlights, there's a few times where Jack Buller is the big bloke that's flying up there and making a contest out of a few times where Leary and Radagalier before he unfortunately went down with an injury, that they were kind of dominating the airways back there, and he was really able to quash that. And again, as I said, bring the ball to ground and make a contest and allow us to score from, the little blokes picking it up, Jordan De Goey as well. But it's that's going to be the difference long term, especially not only for his spot in the side, but if we are, to go through this sort of transition phase and get back to competing in the next 2 to 3, 5 years, and he is still there, that's going to be the difference in big games that could win or lose the game for us. And again, look, we're a long way away from that now, I feel, and we're a long way away from, probably competing for flags. But I said that in game, that's going to be the real difference for him. Not only, again, keeping his spot, but it could be the difference between us winning and losing sometimes. So as you said, mate, it is one to watch, but hopefully it can just be one that we forget about pretty soon.
And he's only played 17 games in his AFL career. I know he's 22, but at the same time,
still very young.
Yeah. Hasn't had much experience, particularly at the MCG. He's just getting his himself going. To be honest, to be goalless in 4 of his 7 matches for Collingwood this year isn't great, to be upfront. But we'll give him the benefit of the doubt and we'll give him time to hopefully adjust a little bit more. That's what we obviously like to keep doing. He's probably not as much or anywhere near of a concern as Bo McCreary is, though, because he's probably the one big negative that we're taking out of this game, and so much so that Fly actually made mention of it in his press conference after being asked. 1 disposal to half-time. You don't like saying this about plays, but it didn't look like he was too interested on Saturday night, and his running both ways was almost non-existent. We always see him as someone that you talk about. Jordan De Goey sitting the barometer with the way that he plays. Bo's another one that does the same thing with the way that he pressures the opponent, the way that he brings so much intensity, lots of tackles, and then at times also hitting the scoreboard. But he's just showing an inability to do either of them, any of those really at the moment. And, you don't know how much he's thinking about those offers that are coming his way from Tasmania, and Fly again mentioned that there's a lot of work to do with him. But 1 tackle, 9 disposals, most of those in the last quarter when the game was sort of done and dusted. I mean, it just doesn't feel like he's doing anywhere near enough. And if this was a more fringe play, you'd be arguing about his spot on the side. So you do wonder what the future holds for Bo McCreary in 2026.
Well, the concern is that we are still having the same conversation, and if anything, it's kind of trending in the worst direction than slowly getting better. He's a name that has often come up as for us in the last sort of 4 weeks, I'd say, over this real big period of games that we spoke about, needing players like him to step up. And it's bloody concerning, mate. I think, I don't know whether a spell in the twos will be what he needs to revitalise himself. It might have worked for Ned Long. Can it work for Bo McCreary? Because you feel like with where he's at in the evolution of his career, he's probably going to go back to the twos and play VFL. And does that benefit him play in the midfield in the VFL side, I should say. So does that benefit him then coming back into the AFL side? And again, look, you mentioned it before, mate, but there's all the talk about him going to Tassie and all this stuff, and a lot of Collingwood's supporters saying that he should absolutely take that money and run right now. So I'd love to say it's, a big period for Bo McCreary coming up. That would have been an understatement, but it's been a big period for him for the last, for the whole year, basically.
Yep.
We've been waiting for him to explode. He was one that we spoke about pre-season, that we were looking for him to, get his midfield minutes.
Very high on him at the start of the year.
Exactly. And to say that he's had a disappointing year up until this point would be an understatement. And I'm flat because he's, one of my favourite players, and all the things that he's usually really good at. One tackle for the game. That's just not Bo McCreary at all. And doing a lot of what you call silly things as well, hitting blokes late and not quite getting there. Marcus mentioned it last week, I think, spending his petrol tickets on a lot of contests that he's just sort of never really going to get to. And so, in a funky spot at the moment, Bo McCreary. And I think the noise, usually we try and, defend our players, but I think the noise that's on him at the moment is probably fair enough. So, fingers crossed for him. He can get back on track soon. And we're a lot better side when Bo McCreary is playing well.
Right. No, we absolutely are. And this is the whole thing to take away from it. This is not us pointing him saying that he doesn't deserve to be in the 23. This is just more about we are, so much better. I mean, if you just imagine him playing even to 70, 80% of what he's able to produce, I mean, we would win a lot more games of football this year. Yeah, the midfield discussion is interesting. He had 4 centre bounce attendances on, Saturday night now, albeit there weren't that many centre stoppages considering the low scoring affair of the match. But, who knows? Maybe a bit of a wake-up call is required for him in the VFL, especially if you've got an Anderson knocking down the door and a few others that are playing some really good football, either in the AFL or the VFL, that are trying to make their way through. So, it's just a watch.
Well, you mentioned Anderson getting dropped, and it was hard for me going into this game. I was shocked, maybe not the right word, but I was disappointed to see that he was dropped because he hadn't really done anything wrong up until that point. Getting his hands on the footy a little bit, scoring as well, which is a really hard thing to do, especially when you're a new player coming through. And I struggled to see how he would get back into this side. But it's got to be said, Bo McCreary's spot at the moment would be up for grabs. Yep. And if you're asking me right now who I'd rather line up, against the Tigers on Saturday afternoon, I'm taking Anderson over McCreary by virtue of the fact that it's not just a blip on the radar anymore. This is a really big chunk of consistent form, or their lack of, that we've had from the number 31. And as I said, maybe the wake-up call, go down to the 2s is probably what he needs at the moment.
Yeah, sounds like
Sucks to say that.
It does. But you know what? This might be an opportune time to do it with some of the opponents that we do have coming out, not to disrespect them, but it does create that opportunity. And it'll be curious to see what Fly does in managing him over the next few weeks. Anything else from this match?
Mate, not much. It was, we've mentioned it already, but not one that'll live in the memory bank for a long time. The first half, I did feel like we allowed Port to move the ball far, far too easily from defence to offence. There was just like, where are we? We were lost at sea too many times, which is really disappointing. And look, the 4 points probably papers over those cracks, but that's when you play against good sides. Happened against Geelong earlier in this year, that you're really going to get exposed if you're not switched on defensively. So one to watch as well, but probably one that we've already been pretty aware of up until this point in the season.
Yeah, we went 40 minutes without a goal in that first half. And again, I know it was a low-scoring, wet encounter, but when Port kicked 5 straight in that time period, a better side can put that game away very, very easily. So it is a bit of a concern to keep an eye out for. But you're right. There wasn't really too much else from this match that sort of took my eye. We made Jack Lukosius look like Paddy Dangerfield in that first half before he went down with that injury. And we did look under siege a little bit in the back line with no Maynard and no Darcy Moore. And fortunately, with Jeremy Howe playing the way that he did, he was able to prevent some more opportunities for Port Adelaide in front of goal. But it did look for the first time a little bit shaky, but yeah, found the way through, which was
systematically more than anything, didn't it? Really, it just felt like we had far too many breakdowns. And look, you take a key player like Maynard out of that side, who not only is he a key player from a performance standpoint, but obviously, you know, a leader of our club at the moment, especially with the absence of Darcy Moore. So that would definitely have a lot to do with it. His timeline on his return, I'm not too sure. I can't imagine they'll be risking him against the Tigers or indeed, you know, much throughout the rest of this season. But that would definitely be a big reason why we saw, you know, mate, there was times where I was wondering where everyone was and what they were doing, you know, being, you know, like squeezing up the ground, just letting their players, you know, run out the back. It was bewildering, but again, we're still, you know, in this transition phase, still learning, mate, still trying to get better every day, as Craig McRae says. So maybe, hopefully they can address that at training this week.
Injury report should be out tomorrow, so we'll get a good idea, hopefully, on both Braden Maynard and Darcy Moore's return to injury. Your votes, please?
My votes. So I've given one to Tim Membry. Okay. I thought his 3-goal effort was really good. And as you said, mate, sometimes you just know what you're going to get from Tim Membry. And he gets a little bit of stick from Collingwood supporters, but I think he's one of our more solid contributors week in, week out. Given his age, gave 2 to Geordie. Very stiff not to get my 3 on the night. As impactful as you're going to see, really. 3 goals, and anytime he was near the ball, something was happening. But it's just reading that stat line, 1 goal. Must have been watching the World Cup as well. Nick Dacos, you know, getting the tap-in goal right on the goal line, and the 41 disposals. It's too hard to go past the 3 for Nick Dacos.
This was as clear-cut a 1-2-3 as I've probably had this year. Jezza gets 1, Dacos gets 2. De Goey gets 3. It was a toss-up between 2 and 3. I thought Jordan De Goey was more consistent throughout the match, was influential for longer, and 3 goals and 20-odd touches, or however many he ended up finishing on, was enough for me to solidify the votes. But they both got 9 coaches' votes as well. So Nick Dacos still leading that award. We've got a very short Speakpie segment, so we'll chuck the cans on and go through a couple of the voice notes. A shout-out to Lukey as well. It was his birthday during last week, so hope he had a great day. I know it was up in Sydney, so a bit quieter on the post. I was able to carry with my Angry Anderson interviews and also the Kane debate, which hopefully you all enjoyed. I know that was a bit of fun for everybody, so that was great to do. But
what was it like, Nico, while we were, you know, on the topic? You know, obviously working at a radio station, which I'm not sure we should name, but we're working at SEN. You have had a bit to do with the corn, but sitting across with him arguing your point, how did you feel?
It's more intimidating than people think, especially a topic that is so contentious in what Collingwood's future looks like. And it got a lot of reaction on the socials once it did come out. But yeah, no, look, it was great. He was a really good sport about it. Made it really fun. I might have just put a little bit of theatre on just to make it interesting, just argue back with him a little bit. But yeah, regardless, it was a really fun sort of event, and you'll see more on the Footy Fan Network throughout the next few months with some different clubs and different content creators getting involved. But yeah, look, it's always a thing with debates. You say your piece and then you drive home and you think, oh, I should have said that, and I should have said that, and that would have made it even better. And anyway, but no, happy with how it came out. I think I held my own. Kane said himself today that he probably still gave himself the points, but that's just Kane for you, so that's okay.
No surprises there.
No surprises at all. But look, if Collingwood win the flag in 3 years' time, best believe I'll be getting that audio out and showing him at every opportunity. So yeah, just a couple of speak pies as a result. Again, it was just one of those games where there wasn't too much going on. So much so that we even had Irvin not come in. That's how lackluster of a game it was.
That's big.
So that says a lot. But we'll give you the 2 that did come through. So we'll start with David. Before we get back into it, a quick word from Revo Fitness. Never have they ever slapped on a joining fee, snuck in hidden fees, or raised their price in nearly a decade. Yes, that's all true. That's Revo Fitness, just the standard they hold themselves to all year round. Great facilities, open 24/7 with a huge network of gyms across the country from just $9.69 per week. Affordable fitness without the BS. It's that simple. Collingwood fans, they don't do excuses, and neither does Revo. Just show up and train. Head to revofitness.com.au. That's revofitness.com.au, or walk into your nearest club.
Hey there, Nick, Jack and Marcus. It's Dave here and walking from the G to Jollymont and feeling pretty good despite that bizarre goalless last quarter. Got to say, in that second quarter, concerned about the new running handball game not working in the wet, but they certainly turned around. Howie and Frampton, the new Twin Towers down back, loving that. Best DMAC game we've seen for a long time, which is great. Degoe, enormous. He is in some rich vein of form, and that's great to see. The rest certainly seemed to do sidey good, because that was his best game for the year. And Ndakos, 3 Brownlow votes and 10 more coaches votes there. Got to say, I have loved Bo, but on current form, Anderson deserves that spot. Keep faith with the young guys, but tell you what, get Peter McKenna down to teach Buller how to kick straight, will you? Okay. Love it. Let's keep going, see how far we can go this season.
Thank you, David. Some great points. Some interesting points.
Some great points. I mean, he's pretty much summed up our pod so far. Yeah. I'd say Nico probably more speaks to the lackluster, effort, or not effort, performance, and again, not one that's going to live in the memory bank for a long time. But interesting, he mentioned about Dan McStay, pretty solid game throughout. But I wanted to bring up his goal kicking, right? It's not a contentious issue at the moment. He's not, doesn't miss too many sitters, touch wood. He has in the past. I know that Freo game that we went to over in Adelaide this year, mate, was a sticking point and a bit of a sore point for many Collingwood supporters. But has he ever kicked a goal where the ball goes over the padding, like the height? Like, he's a big dude, and he's got a massive leg on him.
Good point.
But he always seems, when he's lining up for goal, he just pokes at it. Like, even from 50, he kicked his goal from 45, 50 metres out on Saturday night, and it literally would have been lucky to get over Billy Frampton's head. That's how much it went off the ground. Like, anyone tall on the goal line would have.
Mason Cox style.
Yeah, really, really strange. Get it up in the air, Dan. Float it up there. It's just. It's one of the strangest things. I can't get over it.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you make. I can't say I've noticed too much, but yes, there have been times where he certainly has poked at it and has barely made the distance. So yeah, maybe just got to get more meat in the hamstrings just to. Yeah.
Well, I think we actually said as he was lining up for it, because it's a point that we kind of often make between me and my great mate Liam, who I go to the footy with every week. And I said, I think at least we'll see him kick through it now. Like, he's far up and out. And then it barely got off the bloke on the mark's head. And fortunately enough, it was flat and strong and went through for a sausage. But yeah, if you talk about things to watch, mate,
keep an eye on that now
for the rest of the year.
Why not? And then he also mentioned the forward handball game. I really liked how much we went through the corridor.
Yeah.
Because that's when we play our best footy, when it's fast, free-flowing, and we've got numbers going forward. Now, whether the opposition allows us to do that is probably a big sticking point and something we'll have to see when we do play some better opponents. But it was nice in that third quarter in particular just to see us get back to that 22-23 mold where we win the footy off half-back from a turnover and then we just rush forward. And it's crazy how much space you find in the forward line when that happens as opposed to kick mark or going really wide. And that was a really nice touch to see.
Which is a place for that, but how many times do we need to say? I don't even think with Collingwood, but just with any team in the AFL, when they're of DNA of teams that are winning and winning well, that's one of the first things that everyone talks about. They're running handball games. Sydney's a big one at the moment. Freo as well. Their ability to put teams on the back burner when they win the footy back on the half back flank. And it's been our DNA since Craig McRae came on board over to the Pies, and that's something that we've really looked to have in our game. And probably over our successes over 22-23 was probably where we did a lot of our scoring as well. So I want to see more of it, Nico. I think because it's not only just for us, as I just mentioned there, it's clearly within Collingwood's DNA, but I think for AFL teams right across the comp, when they're going well, that's one of the big things that they're getting right.
Exactly. And then Colin, win, lose or draw, he always gets involved. So thank you for Colin.
Hi, Pies Nations boys. Colin here. Well, a win is a win is a win, no matter how forgettable. Jeremy Howe, what a great game. Billy Frampton was solid. Ed Allen keeps improving every game. And, of course, Geordie and Nick stood up once again. What a fabulous so far from them both. Sam Swaddling showed enough that he is comfortable at the top level. But what's wrong with Bo? Where has his attack on the ball and the player and his run gone? Sidey was dependable and got a fair bit of the ball. Now, if Pendles is over his illness, who goes out for him? Unfortunately, there are a few candidates in my view. Maybe Bo, maybe Rowan Steele or Harvey Harrison. None of them seem to be able to get into the game. Jack Buller keeps presenting and marking well. He just needs to improve his technique so he can kick straight. DC didn't look as though he could walk, let alone run, and he tries his guts out, but he's not suited to the new centre bounce rule. And don't get me started on the umpiring. All in all, very happy with our effort. Hopefully this can be a springboard for the remainder of the year. So go Pies!
Oh, beautiful as always, Colin. 2 points I want to touch on. So, yeah, the DC one we haven't touched on yet. We've seen how much it's affected North Melbourne with Tristan Sherry. They've been playing him forward because these ruck rules have just almost completely taken his influence out of matches. DC was just doing all he could. He was trying to keep up with Jordan Sweet all night, got pumped in the hit-outs, didn't have as many marks around the ground either. It is starting to be a real worry with what we're seeing with DC's decline.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking that as he said it, not wanting to bring it up because, again, another favourite son, another bloke that gives his all for us every time he's out there in the black and white, but it's stark at the moment, Nico, and those rules have really set in now and they're really starting to affect players right across the comp, as you mentioned with Tristan Cherry there and a few others, but he's just getting monstered all over the ground at the moment. And look, even when he is, when we get a chance from away from centre bounce, when he leads up the ground or makes his way defensively, he's that gassed from having to compete in the centre that he's almost non-competitive. Is that I don't want to throw that word out there, but it seems like that. And again, not to put him in the same category as Bo McCreary, but it's now a consistent pattern. Yeah. It's now something we're seeing over a long period of time. And we've spoken a little about that DC could be carrying something that could still be evident. But along with the ruck rules, he's in a real rough patch at the moment.
Just goes to show how brutal that injury to Oscar Steen really is. Yeah. Because it wouldn't be a discussion.
No.
And I would truly believe that Darcy Cameron would be able to flourish even more playing alongside Oscar.
Absolutely. The other point he brings up is, who do we bring in for Pendles? I think this week, and I don't want to disrespect Richmond too much because they are the sort of team that could come out and get a win against us. They are capable and they have been showing signs over quarters of footy. So if they're able to put that together for 4 quarters, there's no reason why they wouldn't come out and do a number on us on Saturday afternoon. But having said that, this week could be a really good week to rest of Bo McCreary back to the twos. Harvey Harrison, unfortunately, I don't think does enough this week to keep his spot. If you're going to be as hot on other players that we have been so far this year, I think unfortunately Harvey loses his spot despite being, again, another favourite of mine. Pendles comes in, Bo goes out, and Anderson comes back in. I think if we were playing the Gold Coast this week, it's probably only Harrison that loses his spot. But this week against the Tigers could be a good week to get him in. Touch wood, because now that I say that, I might be eating my words. As I said, they could come out and pinch that one, the Tigers.
Could. I wouldn't say so. Harvey Harrison still taking some time. Of course, coming back from so long out of the game as well. Look, Rowan still had a quiet game. I don't want to see him out of his team, though. There's still so much he does off the ball as well.
That's his running power.
Yeah, he's superb, and there's no way he should be out of the team. He's the future. He's one of those players that are going to be the future, but that's what we love Colin for. The difference of opinions as well is very good. Before we get to some other things, I want to get to the VFL and VFLW reports. Then I want to touch on the list on a bit of a greater detail because there's more commentary about that, believe it or not, over the week. Kane. So VFLW first because they got the win on the weekend, which is wonderful to see. So they maintain their spot on top of the ladder, which is wonderful, and they did so with a pretty comfortable 53-point triumph over Essendon. They kicked 10 goals, 7 in the end to 2 goals, 2-14. So the Pies girls remained undefeated this season. Amelia Peck, she kicked 4 goals. She's got 13 for the season, and she's kicked multiple goals in 3 of her 5 matches. So she's playing some terrific football. We have a percentage of 364, which is just lovely to see. We've got the new kids on the block in Tasmania next week. So a new journey for the Pies girls. That's at Victoria Park, Saturday, June 27, 9 a.m. So the Pies look to maintain their unbeaten run in that match. In the VFL, a really disappointing, narrow 1-point defeat to Frankston on Friday night over at Kinetic Stadium. It was 11-12 to 12-7, so more scoring shots, and we still went down, unfortunately. But there's only one man I want to hear about from the VFL, and that is Serge, and he gave a pretty detailed report, and he just captioned it as unlucky. And yeah, let's see what he had to say. So thank you, Serge.
Thanks, gents. VFL round 13, Pies trying to win 2 games in a row, took on the Frankston Dolphins at Kinetic Stadium for their 3rd game under lights. The Dolphins kicked 2 goals before the Pies pulled on 3 consecutive goals from Laverty, West and Brown to lead by 5 points at the break. Demeter, West and Cochrane, our best. In a Dow second court term, the Pies' defence under pressure stood up for most of the quarter. Parker, Ryan, Cochrane and Puncher all solid. Smith and Co won the hitouts, but unfortunately we couldn't win the clearances. Some dubious free kicks at the end of the quarter gave the Dolphins the lead, and the Pies found themselves 12 points in arrears, and they were only managed to kick 5 behinds for that particular term. After half-time, the Pies applied some good pressure, and with Smith kicking 2 goals and singles to West, Demeter, Thompson and McCarthy. However, they did kick 5 behinds and could have been further in front. Going to the final term, the Pies were leading by 17 points. In the tough and physical final term, and with the breeze, the Dolphins managed to slowly claw their way back into the game. And at the 30-minute mark of that quarter, the scores were level. The Pies, through Laverty, could have sealed the game, but unfortunately, the Pies were unlucky and went down by 1 point at the death. Our best, West with 3 goals, 20 disposals and 8 marks. Ryan, 24 disposals, was good in defence. Anderson tried hard and was tough all day with 11 tackles. Smith and Co dominated the hitouts, but we couldn't win the centre clearances. Some highlights: Pies' defence was solid and probably their best performance this year. West's performance was first class. Smith continues to grow as a ruckman and goal kicker. Our goal kickers were West 3, Smith 2 and singles to Brown, Demeter, Saxena, Thompson, Laverty, McCarthy. Draft watch: Puncher, Parker solid in defence, Demeter good early, TJ serviceable, Cochrane will benefit from the run, Printable tried hard, Saxena was quiet today, as was McCarthy. Next week sees us play Richmond at round 14 at 12:05pm at Vic Park. Go Pies.
Very extensive. We love it from Serge, so thank you very much to him for providing that. Bit to take out of that.
Absolutely. Biggest point I probably took out of that was, I think he said gold class from Charlie West there, Nico. So that's obviously very exciting and nice to know that despite looking like it's going to be hard for him to find his way in the team, if, the goal kicking woes for Buller continue, or indeed, we have an injury up there. Ponajaski obviously still quite fresh in this side, whether or not we're looking to give him a rest coming up, that, Charlie West is, waiting in the wings, raring to go and still developing his game. So often you can see with these young fellas, Nico, they get dropped and they get a bit bewildered and drop the head, and perhaps you don't see these performances for a while, but he's going back, he's still getting to work and still shining out. So good to hear. And Dimatia's name popped up as well, which is exciting.
Well, I'll tell you the one thing I took out of this report and the game itself. I'll tell you what, I wouldn't mind seeing an Illaru Smith make his way towards the AFL side, hit the scoreboard, dominant in the ruck once again. Teamed up really well with Harrison Coe, as Serge mentioned as well. He's been putting in some decent performances. We just spoke about Darcy Cameron and the struggles he's having at the moment. Richmond, Toby Nankervis doesn't really do much for me, and Noah Bolter's a makeshift ruckman who has had some solid performances, but they had 26 hitouts combined and I think just under 20 disposals. So, again, they're not really doing much for me, and I know you don't want to be too disrespectful to Richmond, but if there's going to be a time just to see what it's like to have a little bit of help for DC, potentially, you could go as far as even resting Darcy Cameron and playing Illaroo Smith one out. Now, that's probably a bit extreme to pin on the young Illaroo, but gosh, I'll tell you what, it wouldn't surprise me if we saw his name pop up in contention for a spot in the senior side.
Yeah, for sure. And exciting because that loss of Steen, as you mentioned before, mate, is being felt heavily at the moment. So to just give DC a chop out, and I feel like Illaroo Smith probably more follows the mould of a Steen. So, that runner and jumper type athlete type player as opposed to, a real workhorse like Darcy Cameron is. So I'm right there with you, mate. I probably wouldn't go as far to say as give DC the rest because that could be a bit of a baptism of fire for young Illaroo Smith. But no, look, again, another opportunity that could present itself in this Richmond game. And I'd even go as far to say as, while we're on the point of giving blokes rest for this week, why not give someone like a Dan McStay or a Tim Membry, these older-ish players, just a bit of time to freshen up before we do travel to the Gold Coast and then a short turnaround into the North Melbourne game. Yeah. Why not against the Tigers give, Charlie West a fair income crack and see what that looks like? Who knows? So, again, look, the selection's not something that I'm very good at. It's interesting, mate. Yeah, when the news came out that we're resting Pendles this week, I think a lot of us went, what are we doing? We're resting Pendles. We come off a bye. What's going on here? But obviously it came out a little bit later that he was a bit under the weather, but look, I probably won't be heading up any selection table meetings anytime soon.
No, I don't think any of us will. Even a Jacob Ryan can't be too far from getting a go if Maynard's still going to stay out of this side through injury. So there's potential and there's
Cochrane
opportunities.
Even.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably give Cochrane a little bit more time. Serge just said there that he was better for the run, like a good racehorse.
I was just thinking that, When you hear that about racehorses, it's generally just middle of the field, nothing too exciting to talk about.
A couple of things before we wrap. So I just mentioned before, the list has been a big talking point, and so has the off season. It's peered its head because we love talking about the off season, and that's why. Dimmer said during the week, you might as well just make the trade period all year round. I mean, he's just having a big sook about everything, Dimmer, at the moment, so I wouldn't take too much of what he says as gospel. But in saying that, a lot of talk about Collingwood and their list and the future, and Lachie Neale has been a big, big talking point and what that looks like. Looks like we're going to offer him a bit of cash. Fly was asked during the press conference, and he said, it's been over-examined, our list. No one gets talked about like we do, but it gets clicks. Do you think our list is over-examined by the media? Do you think there's a bit of that? But also, on the other side of it, do you think it's warranted that it's being spoken about so much, considering where we sit in the grand scheme of things with the Tasmania side to come into it very soon, with an older group of players that are likely going to be retiring over the next 12 to 24 months? What says you?
Whenever you're talking about Collingwood, mate, everything is overinflated, good, bad, or indifferent. So I think the over talk about that point is probably fair enough. I think there has been just a little bit too much discussion. I don't know, in your debate with Kane, you mentioned off air a bit, mate, that he mentioned that if it still continues down this path, that, it's going to look like West Coast 2023, 2024. I don't think that's going to be the case for Collingwood. I don't think we're in that dire straits, but I also think there is an element of truth to the fact that we do seriously need to get wise, and Marcus has been a great, a great person to bring this up, great vocalist of this movement, that with Tassie coming in, not just in the next 2 or 3 years, but longer term, 5, 6, 7 years, we could be in a lot of trouble, and we could look like West Coast a little bit in 2023 if we don't start getting, looking to the future more and, not, recycling as we have in the last couple of years. I think it's been fair enough, 2025, we recycled, we tried, making a last sort of push at it, if you like, and we almost did it. We were one game off the penultimate game of the year, and we had a really exceptionally, the back half of the home and away season, probably the back third of it wasn't that great, but still made a prelim final at the MCG, which is probably the one thing that, if you look at what a successful season looks like, if Collingwood's playing a prelim final at the G, massive tick. So we almost got there last year. Fast forward, almost 12 months now. I don't think that's the case anymore. It doesn't feel like 2024 where we'd come off the flag and, we had a few injuries that year. We couldn't quite get consistent form on the park nor consistent personnel on the park. Reset for 2024, I think I should have said before, but 2025, and almost make the grand final. now we're really getting to scary times, I think. I don't think, there's been a lot of talk about Lachie Neale coming in to this team and,
So, yeah, in saying all that, are you in on Lachie Neale?
I don't think so. And I wouldn't be opposed to it. I mean, 2-time Brownlow medalist. It's not like he would make us worse.
No.
But it just doesn't make a lot of sense for mine. I heard it a little bit on the radio. The only reason I think he would come to Collingwood would be for the money potentially. Do we have that war chest to throw at Lachie Neale?
Well,
Is it the smartest thing to be throwing your war chest at that and not save it for other more important young players that are coming through? Nick Dacos is obviously his contract will come up before we know it in 2028. I just think it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Had it been a year or two ago, absolutely agree with it. Get him on board. We look as dangerous as ever. But he's in that age bracket, isn't he? That he's in the back third at least of his career. He's not a player that hasn't had injuries over the course of his career and serious injuries as well. So that could be quite frustrating. One that probably doesn't, when you lose a Lachie Neale for 2 or 3 weeks in a Brisbane side that's got a McCluggage, got an Ashcroft, got a Zach Bailey, you don't feel that loss as much. But, him coming into our side and coming out of our side would be big news. And I fear that I don't feel that Lachie Neale's best foot is behind him, but I fear that, whether or not he can put another 3 to 4 years of, solid Brownlow winning form together, I wonder if he's still able to do that. And I wonder if that's the best thing for Collingwood Footy Club at the moment, to be taking that risk. I would err more on the side of caution, given that we'd already given it a crack. We almost did it in 2025. Wasn't the case. So now for mine, we really should be looking to the draft and coming up that way.
So with age and injury history, he certainly is a risk, and you do make some great points. The one thing I'd say is that he does feel a very important positional need, and that's winning the ball at the coalface. And Kingy may mention of it during the broadcast. When you see the way that Jordan De Goey is playing at the moment, and you have a three-headed midfield attack of Nick Dacos, Jordan De Goey, and Lachie Neale in the middle, which alleviates some of the pressure and effort from a Darcy Cameron, who has to continue to win the hit-outs, that alleviates some of the pressure of some of the other younger players for the moment of having to win the footy and play a role in the middle of the ground. It does get to a point where someone of his ilk and his experience and his talent can make a significant difference to this side. No doubt about that. The question then becomes, well, what is your direction?
Exactly.
Because Fly has now stated that he's so big on all the free agents that are available. He wants to go hard. We would have the money for it. We will clear up some cap space by the looks of it over the next 6 months. So it certainly is a possibility that we'll be going hard at some of those players that are going to be out of contract. Lachie Neale probably at the top of the list. I'm looking at a Jed Walter as well from the Gold Coast Suns. Maybe even a Zach Bailey, although that seems very unlikely.
That'd be nice.
It would be very good. So the first thing from my point of view would be just understanding, okay, what is the direction that we are looking to utilise as a football club? And it stems back to Marcus's point that he's made many times in this podcast. Is Fly the right man to take us into the next stage of this transitional period? Because if he's still so hard pressed on win now, then go get a Lachie Neale and see what happens next year. We still have a solid amount of plays in that, I'd say 25 to 30-year-old age bracket that can play a role, but we need to be clear-cut. And we were confused as little as a week ago about what the next few years looks like for this side. That needs to be established first before we start looking at what the personnel is, because the last thing I want to do is give up yet another first-round draft pick, potentially for a player in the trade period, and then us fall short again. We need to be hell-bent on making sure that we are making the right call for the now and the future of the Collingwood Football Club. I like Lachie Neale football-wise. I think he's a great player. I think he's one of the most talented players in the competition and still has such an influence on games. I don't want to be a fence sitter. I'm genuinely 50-50 because he makes us such a better footy side. As I said before, he alleviates the issues we're having at the coalface right now. But is he the right player at 32, 33 years of age that can completely flip the script and make this side a contender again next year? I don't know.
Well, so much contention, and we've spoken about it at length on the pod about where we're at. Do we look to the draft? Do we look to replenish? If that was the direction that Craig McRae and the club is going to take, that says to us that for the next year or so, preceding that move, if it is to happen, or even top up, if it would be lovely if we could get Zach Bailey and Lockie Neal, then I might change my tune a little bit. But that says to me that it's flag or bust before Tassie come in, because, or indeed, the first couple of years as they, will have their teething issues as incumbent teams often do. That says to me that it is flag or bust for that next 3 to 5 year period, because without that, then it's not worth it, because then we will be in a world of pain. Look at what happened to West Coast. Tim Kelly came on board when he was one of the best players in the comp. If anything, from a list standpoint, they got better after winning the flag in 2018, but see how quickly that dropped off. So that will be us, I fear, if that's the direction that we choose to take. However, again, it's such a frustrating part about where we're at, because if we got Lockie Neal and there's been rumours about Ben King and stuff, then gee, look out! Like, we could be a really good team, but you've also got to be honest, really honest with yourself sometimes. And I feel like some teams, West Coast again, someone that I want to highlight, they hold on to all the really good things that they do well, but don't acknowledge where they're falling short. And it's getting to a point now where our age demographic, for all the noise and for all the times that we've defended it as Collingwood supporters, it is becoming an issue now. It is holding us up a little bit, and I just think we need to be honest with ourselves, and sometimes that's the best thing you can do, is just wipe a clean slate. I'm not saying we need to boot them all out the door and start afresh. What I am saying is we need to start looking to the future at least, and not thinking that we're capable of winning it right now, because I think if we're being legitimately honest with ourselves, the only way I see that deal getting done is if Lockie Neal guarantees us a top 2 spot. And can any Collingwood supporter, or top 4 spot, and can any Collingwood supporter honestly sitting there right now say that if Lockie Neal was playing in this side this year, that we would be a top 4 team? You couldn't. No. There's no way. So I even start thinking, as we're having this conversation, that, if we're going to be aggressive in the trade period, it's Zach Butters, it's Ben King that I'm after. These blokes that are still really yet to hit the absolute, who are exceptional players, but are still really yet to hit their purple patch in terms of their age demographic in this year, and still, hopefully, fingers crossed for the both of them, have another 10 at least years in the game. Lockie Neal, at best, might have 1 or 2 at best really good years of footy left in him, and maybe 4 or 5 years of footy in total. Is that the best thing for the Collingwood Football Club? I'm not too sure. Yeah, and the one of the things I rebutted Kane on in this argument was, his point of view is that we don't trust the young players coming through. We don't trust that they're the ones that can take this side forward. And if we go down the path of being aggressive with Lockie Neal and others, well, he might have a point, because if we did have more trust in some of those younger guys that are starting to now get some consistent games, then it would very easily be, all right, let's put all our attention into these guys. We might have a couple of years where we don't compete, but watch us in 2028, 29, 30 with a few extra draft picks. We could be a side that goes forward. Exactly. And think of the pressure as well. There's already so much talk about it, as we've mentioned, about where we're at, what we should do. There's not much noise coming out of the club about, obviously Craig McRae has dropped hints, and it looks like he is a recycle man. He's a replenish. He's, that's what he's done in his somewhat short time at the Collingwood Football Club. But imagine the pressure, because that says to Collingwood supporters, it says to the whole AFL comp, that Collingwood, Craig McRae believes that we are still a genuine flag threat, and that's what we are doing to win the flag. So if you finish 10th to 16th in a team where you've bolstered your team with 2-time Brownlow medalists, imagine the pressure that heaps on a football club and the further turmoil that could cause. So that'd be that'd be pretty stark. But I don't know, mate. I sit here and I just don't feel like at the moment that's the best direction that we should take. So much intrigue. Can't wait to see what's going to happen, or maybe we can wait just a little bit. Very last point, a couple of minutes just to spend on Taylor Adams, who today announced his retirement. And someone we've had on this podcast before. Very grateful to have spent some time with him in an episode in our premiership year, which he unfortunately wasn't a part of, with the many, many injury struggles that he had. Came from GWS, was a best and fairest winner for us. All-Australian, potentially, one of those years, or at least in the squad. Was just so impressive, hard at it. I mean, him at his prime would be very handy to have right now in this team, let's just say that. But as we know, injuries really played a big role in his career. He could just never get going for Sydney once he headed over there. And unfortunately leaves the game without
that premiership that he so desperately asked for. Was a big part of our 2018 year, was arguably our best player on grand final day, played a role in the final series too. And we just wish him all the best for whatever lies ahead. I know he's got some ventures outside of footy that he'll put some time and energy into. But gosh, Taylor Adams at his peak, Jack, was a player that you'd love to have in your side.
My favourite player, Nico, at the time. I just loved the way he went about it. Very much, not followed the Braden Maynard ilk because he was a long time before the Bruz, but, follows that mould of just a player you knew when he stepped over the white line every week that he was going to go out and give 110%. I'll never forget a day, and the reason why probably he became my favourite player is a day against Freo, 2018. We're belting them by 70-something points in the wet on a Sunday afternoon. It was cold, and he ran off his player, I think it might have been Fife at the time, to make a real big effort, sprint, and then dive at full strength to, make a smother to keep the ball locked in our defensive 50. And that play in itself, I believe, sums up what he was all about. Just hard, gritty, as I said, fight will tooth and nail for you. Yeah. And really, you look back on that 2018 grand final, that game goes our way. He's an All-Smith medalist. Yeah. And how different we could be, looking not only at Collingwood preceding that, but, looking at his career. So incredibly stiff again, come 2023, not to be in that side. And feel for him in that sense, but what a career. And I think there'll be many Collingwood supporters that, will be sending their well wishes to Tay today and wishing him all the best for the future that he's got to come.
Yeah, incredibly selfless as well. Was arguably a captain of this footy side as well at one point as well in his career. We do wish him all the best. The one thing I really enjoyed was him having the time to come onto our podcast, and I just love the way he spoke about the connection that the playing group at the time had with the fans and how much they embraced, the Collingwood Army and how much of a role it played in helping them ultimately go on to win that 23 flag and just how much he loved being a part of it. You could just tell he was soaking up every moment in those big games, and that's why he was a big game performer when those times came. So, it will be a shame to see him retire in the way that he has, but hopefully he's got a successful career ahead of him in other ventures. All right, that's going to do for us, Jack. A very nice episode.
Shortest pod ever, Nico.
I don't know. I reckon we've still hit the hour mark.
Right.
The way that we waffle, but that's okay. Let's hope we can make it back-to-back wins for the first time in a while against the Tigers, and a nice little Saturday afternoon at the G.
Yeah, fingers crossed, mate. You watch it come back and bite us on the bum. But no, hopefully we can go back and get the win against the Tigers. It'd be good. And as we mentioned a lot on this pod, mate, just looking to, positive signs obviously for the future, but we can still salvage something out of this year. And that we shouldn't take the Tigers game lightly. It could be a big 4 points come, the context of the end of the season. Good to be with you, mate, again. And a couple of weeks off for me, off to the Gold Coast next week. So look forward to seeing you on the GC and a bit of warmer weather, and hopefully Collingwood win while we're up there as well.
Well, yeah, I'm going to keep going up there until we actually win over there. I don't want to see a goalless half ever again. But yes, enjoy. I'll see you up there in a couple of weeks.
Will do, mate.
Until then, I've been Nicholas Sacco. You've been listening to or watching the Pies Nation podcast, where the pies are hot and the drinks are cold. We are thrilled to have the North Texas Devils sponsoring the Pies Nation podcast once again for season 2026, just in time to celebrate their 5th anniversary as a club. They are one of the best clubs to compete in the USAFL and are still on the lookout for new talent for both their male and female programs in the lead up to the new season. Their aim is to have 2 male teams and a female side compete in the Nationals in Florida later this year. They've got a new coach in Brendan Silva, and their main man, Peter Wood, is a passionate Pies man, and it's why it's great to have their support across the campaign. To learn more about the club or register your interest as a player, click the links in our YouTube bio or podcast description and join the Devils today.